Joining the program now is the junior senator from Kentucky, Senator Rand Paul. Rand, welcome to the Peter Schiff Show. Oh, we're still having problems getting the senator on the line. What we're gonna talk about his response. Rand Paul gave I guess I don't know if it's an official or unofficial Tea Party response, because I didn't even know that the Tea Party is necessarily nationally organized. So I don't know where. I know they have a Tea Party caucus. I'm not really sure, how they went about choosing, somebody to give the response on behalf of the Tea Party. In fact, I'm not even sure what the political, how they go about figuring out who is going to give the Republican response. Something I want to ask Rand Paul when he shows up. Exactly how Marco Rubio got the nod. Not that I think he did a particularly bad job. I think he made some very, very good points in his Republican response. But I think we needed something that was a little bit more, I think bigger picture about just how bad things are and how much the president is missing the gravity of the situation that confronts us, where he can simply talk about the equivalent of rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, that it's not about the government could just spend a little bit here or spend a little bit there or create this program or create that program. I mean, that is business as usual. That is what we've been doing all these years as the problems have been getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think the Republicans need to focus on just how big this crisis is and how bad it's going to get. I think, that was part of the problem with the 2008 crisis, is they didn't get out in front of it, probably because George Bush was the president, so they felt uncomfortable, even if they knew about the problem, really warning about it, so that when the crisis hit, they were the ones that were blamed for it because their guy was at the helm of the ship when it hit the iceberg. But now that they're not, now that they're, the passengers on the ship, they are certainly better positioned from a political perspective to call it like it is, to really talk about how devastating this next crisis is going to be if we continue to follow the course set by the president. Then when we go over, right, when we hit this, cliff, when we have this collapse, they're in a much better position because they were warning about it. Senator, are you there?
Yes. Good morning.
All right. Thanks for showing up. I know you're busy. Let me ask you, before we get into your response, and I read the text of it. I wasn't able to find it on television, which was a problem, but I read it. But what did you think of Marco Rubio's Republican response?
I was hearing bits and pieces of both the president's and Rubio's responses, and, I think Rubio made some good points.
Yeah. How did they go about determining who gives the Republican response? Were you ever considered for that?
I think the response typically is made by leadership. Leadership votes on who gets to respond to things like this. But in the end, it was a major coup to get the Tea Party response because, thousands of media outlets covered that there were two Republican responses. We didn't get the same TV coverage, but as far as print coverage, I'd say we got an enormous amount of print coverage. And a lot of stories today are comparing and contrasting the different Republican responses. So we're pretty happy to have been part of it.
Yeah. Now, I read your response, and I thought it was quite good. What kind of reaction are you getting in the Republican Party to your response, and is it creating any controversy, or are they happy to have it?
I think all good responses. We've had a lot of requests for radio, print, and television today, and so I think that most of the responses have been good. We've been excited about it. Plus, we get to give a response that, I'm not afraid to pull any punches, so I talked about a lot of things that are important to me. One, that, the sequester's a pittance, and that the sequester really is only a slowdown in the increase in the growth of government spending. It's not a true cut, and we have to do more to have a chance of doing anything. I got to talk some about school choice, which is a project that I've been interested in for many years. I got to talk about, some of the sending of weapons to people who I don't think are reliable allies, such as Egypt. And so there are a lot of things that you might not necessarily hear in an official response that I got to put into mine.
Yeah, now, when it comes to the sequester, I mentioned earlier that I think the best thing that can happen of the viable alternatives, it seems like, is that the sequester goes through and that we have the cuts. The only problem is it's too small. We need even more cuts. But do you think the Republicans are going to hold tight? Because unlike the tax cut debate, if we do nothing, the cuts take place. So since there's no way to improve upon that, will the Republicans be able to hold tight and force those cuts to take place?
I think you're starting to see some resolve on the Republican side and some understanding. In the tax debate, you're right. The tax rates were going up automatically because they were sunsetted. Here we have the reverse. Spending cuts will go into place, or at least cuts in the rate of growth will go into place automatically. So we'd be fools to give up on that. Their only danger is there are some who still believe in sort of the Keynesian argument that we need to spend more money on defense, not for defense, but for jobs. And so some see these government jobs as important enough to raise taxes for. So if you lose some Republicans who are willing to raise taxes in order to support Keynesian defense work program, then that could be a danger. But I think there's enough resolve that I think we will resist that temptation. And so I'm hopeful that we stand firm and that these cut in the rate of growth at least goes through, because it won't go anywhere towards balancing the budget, but at least lessens some of the damage of new debt.
Yeah, and I think the Republicans do a lot of damage to the brand by arguing for defense spending on the basis that it creates jobs. Because then how do you argue against the president when he wants to spend money domestically on the basis that it creates jobs? I mean, because if you think that government spending creates jobs, once you concede that point, you've lost the argument.
Yeah, and once you say it's good for defense, why wouldn't it be good for cars or, iPods or iPads? Why shouldn't the government just buy stuff from industry, because then industry would thrive? It just ignores the fact that the money's got to come from somewhere. But, no, I'm hoping we stick together on that. The other thing that I mentioned in my speech last night was that there's only one proven stimulus. There's only one way that's proven and absolutely works to stimulate the economy, and that's to leave more money in the economy, basically to leave more money in the hands of those who have earned it. And that's a little different than we're hearing from Republicans. The best they seem to be able to do a lot of times is to argue for revenue neutral. Yeah. And my point is revenue neutral won't do anything to stimulate the economy. All that does is it takes the money from one group and says, oh, you guys need to pay more and we need to pay less. But it doesn't really help the economy.
We've got this huge unemployment problem in this country, and the president proposes making it worse by raising the minimum wage to $9 an hour. I mean, two things. What's the chance that Congress would go along with this? And is there any chance that someone like you could actually take on the president and oppose abolishing the minimum wage so that we could do something about our unemployment problem?
Well, we need to have a big economics class for the country and for the president and teach him that basically anytime you raise the minimum wage, what you do is you exclude the least skilled workers. You exclude the people who are the most disadvantaged. So in our society, a lot of times that's been minorities and the youth. And so that's where unemployment will increase, And if minimum wages worked, why not $40 an hour, or why not pay everybody what the president? Don't you think it would be a balanced approach to pay everybody what the president makes? He makes $400,000 a year. Why should he make any more than the guy cleaning the streets? So
and the president just focuses on the extra income that he believes these minimum wage workers will earn without thinking about where the money's coming from. If it's going to come from higher prices or diminished profits, it means that purchasing power is being destroyed someplace else. It's not a free gift. When you mandate higher wages, somebody has to pay the price.
Well, we could send the president a copy of Bastiat and let him read about the seen and the unseen. The seen will be some workers will have more take-home pay. Those who keep their job and that are making $8 an hour will make $9 an hour. But what is unseen is the guy that could have been hired at $8 an hour that doesn't get a job, or the person who loses their job and no one seems to remember that person because someone's now making $1 an hour more. So that's the unseen, and that's the thing that most people with big hearts and small brains, they're always for helping people, but they don't see the unintended consequences of having a big heart without using your brain, and that's that you'll create more unemployment.
But what I think would be really good, and I don't know, maybe you could do this, is instead of just arguing against increases in the minimum wage, I think it's a better arguing point. Once you concede that increasing the minimum wage is bad, you have to concede that the existing minimum wage is bad. So it's a better argument if we put forward a bill to abolish it completely. Singapore doesn't have a minimum wage, and they don't have the unemployment problem that we do. They have a much higher standard of living per capita. So why can't we go back to, we didn't have a minimum wage before what? When did it came in under Lyndon Johnson? Or did it come in under Franklin Roosevelt? But we certainly didn't have one for the entirety of our history. And there are other countries that don't have them now, and they're doing well.
Well, I think it sort of illustrates how far apart we are. The country voted almost 50-50 in the last election, so we're almost evenly divided. But then when you talk about issues like this, every Democrat is for a minimum wage. Not only are they for a minimum wage, they're for increasing it to, whatever level they can get away with. But Republicans disagree with this, and you're right, many Republicans, myself included, don't think that a minimum wage actually helps people. We think it hurts and creates unemployment, hurts the most disadvantaged, but we're not at a position where we can actually get rid of the minimum wage. We're not at a position to win the argument, although I would say that over the last 20 years, we're winning the minds of a lot of economists and those who teach economics in the universities. I think we're growing, and there's a growing trend of people who are teaching their students that it's a fallacy that minimum wage actually helps people, that it actually hurts the people you intended to help.
I mean, just basic economics, all you have to do is draw the line, supply and demand, and you can see the surplus of workers that are created when you fix the price of labor above the free market price. I mean, anybody that takes a freshman course in economics is going to know that the minimum wage is going to destroy jobs. And we're at a point in our history where we have so many people that are unemployed right now. Why would we want to make it that much harder for those people to get jobs?
And you're right, and that's in any basic economics course, you talk about the price of things, and your wages is the price of labor. So just like the price of bread, if you set the price too high, the bread will rot on the shelves. If you set the price too low, there'll be no bread. But the marketplace finds that medium and finds the most efficient price to distribute the good to the most people. And if you disturb that market price, you disturb the market, and you either get shortages or gluts.
And meanwhile, the real price is not just the wages, but it's all the taxes and litigation costs and mandated health benefits. The president is doing everything he can to make hiring people as expensive as possible. And then he wonders why there are so few jobs.
Yep, you're exactly right.
And the other thing, and I played this montage, what really disturbed me about his speech is almost every other word was some new thing that he was dreaming up, some new idea, some new plan, some new proposal that the government is going to fix this problem. If we just have another program, another agency, another goal.
Just beware. Anytime you hear the word investment coming out of his mouth, check your pocket because he's reaching in your wallet. Well, anytime he says investment, he's reaching in your wallet for more of your money.
Yeah, and of course, the government, I mentioned earlier in the show, the government should never invest money because there's no profit and loss. They can't do it. They should only spend money and spend as little as possible because they're never going to expend it efficiently. Rand, thanks for all the work you're doing up there. I wish I could have seen that speech, but I'm glad I was able to read it. Up next, hour 2 of the Peter Schiff Show. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Imagine everyone on top.